Well, would you look at this beautiful Chinook right here? Ah, just kidding. Gotcha. It's an Apache. Right, what the purpose of... I've been wanting to do this video for quite some time, and here we have the VDV, and here we have the American Airborne. And essentially, whilst this might seem like a very silly comparison in many ways, because there are, we don't want mirror comparisons at all. We actually want a nice complement of deck building to each other. The specs should complement other specs, and they should be used in an appropriate manner. So there are some differences amongst these units in many ways, and there's a lot of differences amongst the specializations, the countries, the factions, whatever, in many ways. But I think that these two are probably the most comparable. The Guards and the Armored Brigade, I don't think are as comparable. Marines, Russian Marines, definitely not. Striker doesn't really compare to anything. SF doesn't really compare to anything. And the Baltics, yeah, they're very unique. And this is a good thing. But these two are probably the closest in many ways. So what we're going to do in this video, if you're interested, if you're not, that's absolutely fine. But go down the list of one by one, the Recon infantry vehicles, etc. And just see if we can compare these things to talk about what's good, what the factions are both great at, and what they're not so good at. Because hopefully this will help us and you play better. Now, we start off, as always, by looking at this Chinook. Got you again. No, of course, it's an Apache. Okay, it's actually a Guardian, but you're splitting hairs now. And we look at the reconnaissance tab. Now, obviously, the Airborne on the American side recently lost their snipers. So, a bit awkward, because you can't really directly compare the lack of snipers anymore, even when you put in... that's not a sniper, and this is just a little fire team, which, yeah, massive change from the PT. Don't really know why, but this is what we've got. So, yeah, it's just a small reborn team. What I don't get, though, is, yeah, these guys still retain their stealth, but they don't get any ghillie suits or anything like that. I mean, similar to these guys, although they are stealthy-ish. Same with these guys. Alright, the snipers, there's no equivalent, because that's been moved to strikers. Here to the striker core, so these were the snipers they used to get, but not anymore. So even if we do pin them up like this, there's not really too much to talk about, even when we go for the anti-material kind of setup. So okay, we can't do that. We're just going to focus on these. So in the sniper category, the Russians have it. The Russians have it by quite the landslide. In terms of the fighting recon, which is what these guys are, they are very actually good in their own individual right, but they're also very expensive for what they are. So unless you're facing a dedicated CQB squad, which this will lose against basically every American team, unless you're fighting a sort of non-anti-infantry squad, that's the only way these guys win. And for 60 points, they are cheap. They do have the advantage of the smoke, the stealth, and of course the vision and the armor. But otherwise, they're pretty damn useless. These foam barrack launchers are okay, but they don't really do much at all. You can obviously get these guys in a longer range configuration, at which point you can't help but think, what is the point? That is a very low amount of penetration, that's a very low amount of damage. And at 700 meters, they actually do end up missing quite a lot, especially if the vehicle turns. So yeah, it does make it a bit of a pointless squad, and this fire support, even at 700 meters, is really not that great. Yeah, I never see the point of the Spetsnaz anymore. It felt like it used to be better, and now it's just a bit shit. The VDV Razvedka, on the other hand, does have one thing going for it, a fantastic RPG. In case you don't know about the AK-103, it's got compensating recoil, where when the bolt slides backwards, there's a counterweight that slides forward, in theory, making it more deadly and more accurate, but during sustained fire, which I think is super cool. Not very relevant to what I'm talking about, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. Watch a video on Forgotten Weapons about it. But this bazooka is pretty good. Obviously, in many ways, it's essentially a direct comparison to the 84 high power, which is not what this squad has. This just got 3 disposables, and on the other side, you've got the Moors, which obviously has that really nice 600 meter range. So there really is not much of a comparison there either. But this squad is only great if you have it in big numbers. And for 70 points, it becomes a little bit expensive to do that. So both of these Recon squads are kind of irrelevant. With the Recce, I've seen it used to very good effect, because for 65 points, this is a lot more interesting to me than this squad. It actually makes it quite attractive, in all honesty. Very cheap. You get 2 of these for 130 points. You get nice Moors in ambush configuration. It does, you know, do a lot of damage at 600 meters, so that's all we're kind of interested for these guys. I don't think there's any point in taking them in the standard configuration. They just become a bit of a feeble fire team, but it is a very cheap fire team, and that is something worth bearing in mind. Right, we're moving on to the Recon vehicles next, and okay, so there's a couple of nuances here. This is just a transport, but it does have a really nice 30mm on it, and I actually really do rate it for many things. It's a very good capable vehicle. By the way, of course, all of these can be power dropped, because that is why they're in this tab. Most of the vehicles can be power dropped in here, and it is just very good. When you get flanking with this thing, with the smoke, which is abusive because it acts as one-way smoke where you can shoot but the helicopter can't shoot back at you. If you get these things in the back line, it just works an absolute treat. And for 60 points, it's nice and cheap, so you can really afford to spam these out with that really nice, lovely 30mm on top. Yeah, these are more Recon vehicles, actual Recon, not transports, so it doesn't really have a direct comparison here, apart from this guy. His vision is, honestly, just absolutely awful. The only time he gets a bump is if you upgrade it to have this launcher, which, again, in honesty, isn't that bad inherently, but it is a tiny bit pointless. The only reason you upgrade it to this is primarily for the vision, which is inferior to what the Americans get, especially for that similar sort of price point. 2,400 meters of range, which is obviously absolutely fantastic. These guys don't have anything, and neither can take troops. So again, a feature from PT that was phenomenal is that you do have seats here, so why not use them? Similar with these guys, they could carry 4 troops each. The laser designator on this vehicle is absolutely unreal, and it is a really good vehicle to have. When we look at the drones next, there's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on. So the Cornet and the thermobaric version as well. So that actually follows the laser, which is interesting because you'd think a drone will be able to hit it no matter what, but it's nice to have a bit of extra tracking, isn't it? Interestingly, the drones do not do top attack damage, top armor damage, even though obviously they're in the sky shooting from the top onto this roof of the tanks, but they don't act that way in the game, which is a really bad feature, and it would make these options a lot more attractive. 2 missiles really isn't enough to deal with anything in reality. If there's an infantry squad, you might be able to kill the sniper, given that you do hit it twice, but these things do miss quite a lot as well, so it's not very effective. The anti-vehicle stuff is fine, it's just nowhere near good enough to really make this worthwhile. When we look at this Russian drone, you've got some more options. But again, there is almost absolutely no point to putting any of these options on. The only thing that you really want to upgrade it is for the sensors to have that nice 4,500 meter range, which is the equivalent of this. Okay, this is a bad boy that is absolutely worth upgrading to the max. It works really well. Even when you have it with just Hellfires, these are obviously top armor attacks, so they are very deadly. They do work against infantry and vehicles as well, and they do an insanely good amount of damage. So yeah, very valuable to have in your deck, even if it's just for, you know, a sacrificial lamb to try and kill some of the troops that have breached into your back line. Even the Griffiths missiles, which again, they don't attack vehicles on the top for some bizarre reason, but you just get a bit more firepower in terms of mass, and these are good missiles as well. They track very well. And of course, the superior Recon drone is the Global Hawk, with its fantastic range, really good maneuverability. It is important to note that all the Russian drones are extremely slow. This one's a little bit quicker, and this one's actually got quite healthy speed, so when you deploy them, they reach the battlefield a lot quicker and are actually a lot more useful than these two. So when it comes to the fighting infantry, Russia's is overall kind of pointless in the VDV. America's does have purpose, especially for that dirt cheap price tag. When it comes to the vehicles, I forgot to talk about this. It is a nice and cheap vehicle, to be fair. With the upgrade and the sneak function, it does work really well. It's just obviously incredibly slow compared to its American counterpart, so you can't help but think Russian buyers? No, absolutely not. With the Recon vehicles, again, whilst this is great, it's a transport, not exactly a Recon vehicle. So again, America definitely has it in this category, especially with the drones. Despite, on first look, you might think that the Russians is way better, but in reality, you know that the Americans do have it going for them in this tab. Cool, so 1-0 to America. Yippee. Or, fuck yeah. Cool, infantry. There's a lot more direct comparisons to be made here, which is quite a nice feature. When we look directly, for the example, when we try and compare the Desantniki to the Airborne, very similar comparison in many ways. You could even have it as this setup if you wish, but no, that's just a little bit silly to nobody uses the standard Airborne. You use the Airborne Next Gen because of its absolute supreme firepower in every way, shape and form. I thought this would have some merits with the fact that it's just got 5 of these firing ideally quicker, but in reality it's much better to bring the Moors in every way, shape and form. We look at the weapons. Weapon for weapon, the 0.3 damage per second is ridiculous because remember, when this is at 600 meters range, these stats, obviously at 400 meter range, this becomes more deadly and it does more damage and it penetrates the armor, whereas this will not penetrate the 8 armor points, so it'll be much more reduced damage. Under barrels wise, they are the same, although I got a feeling these do actually fire faster. Can we get stats on that? There is no rate of fire 5, rate of fire 5. Okay. Well, they're identical, although you'd think these are a little bit quicker and maybe a little bit more accurate just because they are a dedicated grenade launcher. But on paper, their stats are identical. When it comes to the machine guns, on paper they are identical, which is crazy to me because this, in reality, just seems to hit a lot harder. These PKPs are okay at their job, but the rest of the section seems to be lacking, whereas this contributes the firepower with the rifles at the same time. Obviously massively outranging this squad. Even though it does have an extra man, it is definitely weaker. And when it comes to talking about the bazookas, there is absolutely no comparison here. The Moors is superior in every way, shape and form to the RPG-7. Hell, I'd probably even consider going so far as to say that these 5 are better than these 6 launchers. So there we go, 5 points difference, but well worth the price. It is a much better, vastly superior squad. The next option we can talk about is these 2 grenade launchers. So as you can see on paper, very similar loadout. But when we look into the detail, you notice that these are 40mm grenades and these are 30, which is why it's called the AGS-30, by the way. And essentially, it just means they're slightly weaker because there's a bit less explosive mass in them, but they do have the same range. So yeah, the Mark 19 is definitely the superior squad here. The extra man does make the squad ever so slightly survivable, but ideally, at 800 meters, you don't want these guys to be taking return fire whatsoever. In a 1v1 test, these guys will almost definitely win. There is no 50 cal equivalent, but it's in many ways the exact same thing as this. What's good about the 50 compared to the Mark 19 is the fact that it does 20 kinetic penetration. And what that really means is that whilst heat penetration or high explosive penetration does damage, however tiny it is, to vehicles, even if it's minimal, so say you do 1 HP, not even, say you do 0.1 HP damage, this will continue to fire at it, even though it realizes, well, I guess it doesn't realize how pointless that feature truly is. I guess maybe in some situations this will help you finish off some heavily armored vehicles, but that's very rare. The 50 will not fire at vehicles it can't kinetically penetrate or do any damage to. So this will continue to focus on firing against infantry, whereas this might be distracted by a pointless task of shooting at a vehicle that it can't shoot through. Moving on. We've got the Stingers now. and the Stingers are comparable to the VDV Igla team. Now, this is basically the worst Stinger in the game. Not by much, by a range of 200 meters. However, more damage, more penetration, and whilst the squad does have a nice feature of a machine gun, so it does provide a little bit of extra fire support for your team, the range is really minimal, and you're much better off relying on, you know, the grenade launcher or something if you want that suppressive fire against the infantry. So I do feel that like these squads are a little bit pointless because they really don't bring. This machine gun doesn't bring too much extra firepower, and these rifles and the underbarrel definitely don't bring that much extra fire either. Yeah, I'm just looking. 40, 30. Okay, yeah, it's lower penetration as well. Heat penetration on the 30 mil as well, which is absolutely reasonable. Obviously, having 2 Stingers is much better. And whilst Russian helicopters are much tougher than American ones, I'd take this squad any day. It is a lot more expensive though, so having the ability to spam these out is obviously quite a nice feature. There is no direct equivalent for the next squad that I'm going to be talking about. So yeah, this is where all the disadvantages. So far we've said that America is better in every way, shape and form. But this is where the disadvantages of Russia get replaced. The VDV, the Shah, so Shturmoviki, assault men, basically. Where they excel is having these RPGs. They are actually pretty damn good against armor just because of how cheap they are. 2 squads flanking a tank will do very well. But what people are starting to realize is that there's much better disposable launchers for Russia available, and having this upgraded option to the Fluent barracks is just devastating. Not only does it do damage to vehicles, and quite hefty damage as well to lightly armored vehicles, but this launcher absolutely decimates infantry squads. Now, you might have seen my shorts where, you know, they're a bit silly tests, but they are thought-provoking in terms that not only does it get lots of people triggered and writing how outraged they are that I perform my tests in a certain way, but it's just to show the point that a 50-point squad can annihilate, beat the odds in certain circumstances, which is the purpose, to show you that you know, sometimes it's about how you use the squad, not the price tag and how it should win. So yeah, being able to use the squad well and correctly makes it absolutely deadly, and this is where all the shortages of the VDV infantry tab do get made up massively. It's dirt cheap, you spam them out, a boring tactic. I hate spam tactics, but it does work very well. Okay, let's talk about these two. Now, this is very interesting, and it leads for a nice debate, because when we look at the prices, obviously on paper this is better. It's got more penetration, there's 2 of them, and it's only an extra 25 points. So this is a much better weapon system on paper. However, this is where the howevers really do matter. However, the issue is that most American vehicles have APS, so having the 2 of the launchers, don't get me wrong, a lot of the Russian ones do as well, but it's potentially not as common, and Russians do prefer to spam BMPs, which obviously do not have APS, so the TOW does really well against them. Essentially, the chance of these missing means that there's sometimes little point to them. If you get enough of them en masse, then of course they contribute in their own way, but essentially cornets do really see a diminished use. Now, the infinite supply purpose of vehicles does sort of bump up the purpose, but otherwise I really don't see the purpose. In short, the 65 points tag is very, very attractive, but otherwise I really don't see the point. The situation gets worse when you compare the weapons squad. Let's pin this one up. And you realize that for 300 meters range, the difference is, you know, same squad in very many different aspects. I suppose you can even upgrade it just so you put the similar price tag, but you get a much beefier 9-man squad with machine guns and of course 2 top attack javelins, where again Russia has a slightly less common APS. So this squad for 35 points difference is better, and being supplemented by a cheap 65 point squad is a much better way to run it, because you do get the advantage of that range as well. So again, America definitely takes the crown here. The Metis is, well, it's pretty awful, to put it shortly. It doesn't really have much going for it. It is unbelievably slow. Yeah, that is just such a poor speed. For comparison, let's look at the Cornet speed. At least it's a bit more respectable. 720 does make a big difference. With the Javelin, 540, but yeah, and 720 for this tow as well. So if we're comparing these two squads, then potentially again you can argue it's got a bit of machine gun fire support, but when do you want that with the Metis? If you upgrade it to the improved Metis, it becomes way too expensive for what it is. You may as well have cornets and again supplement the firepower that you're missing from that cord with the AGS. This is an absolute solid win for America, not partly due to how amazing the Airborne is, but just how much better everything else on paper is. The Sturm is the massive advantage for Russia here, but cornets, they just miss way too much to be nearly as remotely effective as the Javelins. Vehicles. Right, okay, this is where the turntables turn, as it were. We have an abundance of spam, and with the abundance of resupply, of course, there's a lot of good stuff going for Russia here. The BMD4s, I actually really rate them. I know a lot of people kind of scoff at them, but they're very, very good, very capable. Especially when you put that tiny bit of extra armor and make it over 16 HP, it makes for a very, very good vehicle. We look at all of these IFVs and they are just fantastic, especially when, again, you do give them the upgrades and they do become a little bit pricey for what they are. But these guns, and just this as a 15-man transport APC, becomes very attractive. You've got lots of these alternate cheap options as well. And you've got something like the Cornet, which shoots out missiles like there's no tomorrow. Now, with the update, with the sneak function, now the Cornet does make a lot more sense because it can actually get those missiles to hit the targets. Bear in mind, it's shooting two at once from each launcher, so there's 4 missiles basically at the targets going. So this makes it very much worthwhile these days. So the Cornet is very good now. America's counter or equivalent for a very cheap price tag, in all fairness, for 3 of these, you can get 1 of these. So I actually think I know which way I'd rather go. I'd rather have 3 of these because ultimately a Hellfire and some rockets will annihilate this vehicle, no questions asked. Having these, however, is very good. I actually really like them just to have that infantry capability. They're very, I mean, the Cornet already has that as well, but yeah, this is just a very attractive option. I've never really understood, by the way, why is this the same price as this when this is so much better in every way, shape, and form. Yeah, even when you put the cord on it, I don't see the point. Just yeah, this is much better. Moving on. This ISV is phenomenal. It's fantastic. The only downside of it, it doesn't have any supply, even though quite clearly these cages you could strap all the supply in the world to it. Yeah, it does seem like they've just pick and chosen some. Like this has more infinite supply and this has a 0 supply. Very, very ridiculous mechanic. The Humvee though is it is the cheapest quick infinite supply glitches, and this is where its advantage really shines, because not only is it quick, but of course it has infinite supply, so it makes it the perfect ambulance where you literally just jump the squad up behind any building and get this to resupply to 100% in almost no time. Where America has a really good advantage going for it is this Sheridan. Now, this Sheridan is actually great for many, many reasons. Firstly, it's cheap, but also this big 152mm cannon does really good damage against infantry. So you've got the HE, you've got the heat, and you've got the rocket as well, which is respectable. I mean, for a simple 5 points, why not? Just put it on. It's a very good rocket. It helps harass the Russians. Now, the armor is paper thin, but you got to remember that 2 smokes goes a long way in this game. So yeah, you'd expect this vehicle to maybe have 1, but no, it's got 2 sets, even though I don't actually see the smoke launchers, so here they are. Yeah, whatever. Very good vehicle. I very much like and enjoy using it. It's a much better alternative to the noob tube of the CEV, the M60 of the noob tube, just because it's so much more quicker and it does provide really good fire support to infantry. I take this into battle all day long. I get a lot of use out of it. If it kills one Russian squad, it's basically almost broken even. If it helps chip away at a range of 1,200 meters at other squads as well, it does really, really well. So yeah, use these en masse, keep them nice and far, keep them at their maximum range, and they won't let you down. When it comes to comparing, this is the sort of only direct comparison that the vehicles have in the VDV and the Airborne, is these light paradroppable tanks. So, yeah, there's a lot to break down here. Let us talk about the unupgraded versions first. So very similar price tag and very similar performance. The 105 gun is actually quite atrocious, and when you just compare them like this in both their dirt cheap configurations, I'd take the Sprut all day any day. It is much better. However, the story completely changes when you do wish to upgrade their guns and upgrade their armor. Now, not only do you get an absolute lovely selection of armor, and the reactive works very well, but you also get APS here as well. And this is where the tides really turn. So let's try and make the prices similar as possible to the two. And you see that armor-wise, yeah, Sprut is marginally better, but it's paper thin, so it really doesn't matter. The HP doesn't matter because, again, Russia does not have Hellfires, therefore it can't one-shot these, whereas, you know, if it's an American mirror match, then these can be one-shotted. Firepower-wise, you have a fantastic, it is the best gun in the game, 1,400 meter range with the highest penetration, kinetic penetration of any armor piercing fin sabot discarding, fin stabilized discarding sabot round. This one is nowhere near as good, and it does have nice options, especially with the HE. That is a really nice touch in all fairness. You still get the HE round in the dirt cheap configuration too. So if you do want to use it as a direct equivalent, as an answer to the Sheridan, that's absolutely a really good option too. But yeah, it's just you do want this for its higher than average Russian anti-tank potential, but still nowhere near as good as the M8 Thunderbolt. And again, when you just for an extra 30 points make it have APS, this tank becomes absolutely lovely to use. We just all wish that it aimed a bit faster and got more rounds off because, yeah, oh yeah, by the way, that is a dirt slow reload time, whereas the Thunderbolt does really well in that aspect. So yeah. So let's see who wins this category. Lots of cheap spam available, which is Russia's strong point, I know, but I absolutely hate that tactic. Lots of large seating capacity available as well, like this 15-seater, which can take 15 men, but you got to remember that this takes 9. So yeah, the squad sizes are different, and that's something to bear in mind. Overall, you have a lot of good variety and a lot of good cheap options, but they are all very slow options and they're not that effective apart from the Cornet now these days, and the Sprut is just so much worse. The Airborne here is much more mobile in the American side, and it just gives you that extra punch of firepower, especially when you need it. So it is much better in my opinion. So we've won the Recon tab as America, we've won the Infantry tab as America, and we've won the Vehicles tab as America too. If you disagree, that's fine. Let me know in the comments below and make your case. Let's have a nice sensible discussion why you disagree with me. Support. Should we even waste time talking about it? The VDVs is pretty awful. The Kamaz is subpar in every way. The MTV is just either the LMTV or the MTV is superior in pretty much every way. Nobody uses the LMTV, so let's talk about the MTV. It's just better. It just is so much better. There is really... Yeah, I don't have much to say. It's got more people, more weight, speed is almost identical. Okay, you can't paradrop it, but who's paradrop supply vehicles apart from on silly events? Cool. Quick discussion, that was over. That was easy. The Nona, the donor doesn't really do much for me. It was the auto fire feature was interesting. Of course, you couldn't have it. You did have it on the Drock, but the Drock is something that is worth noting. It is a very cheap mortar, and it's a very quick mortar as well, which does, of course, matter. America doesn't have mortars in here. They've only got artillery, so it's hard to compare mortars to arty. They are very different. They perform different jobs, and of course, on a mortar, the aim time is a lot quicker than field guns. Now, the Hawkeye, I barely use it, but I do appreciate its talents. Firstly, what the major talent is the fact that it's very cheap. The other thing you gotta appreciate about it is the fact that it's nice and fast. So even when you get it to the battlefield, expend its ammo, and then RTB, it's still very, very quick, so it's very good. I don't think anybody really uses them in the cluster rounds. If you want to use it in the smoke rounds, it's fine, but you're better off using like a lav or something, a lav mortar, because that's just going to be a lot better in every way. Now, the much far superior thing is the Brutus with its 155, of course. I knew that. I double checked for no reason. Wink. Yeah, this is so much better in every way, shape and form, especially when you upgrade it to fully guided rounds. It still has 18 rounds, but they're all laser guided. Remember, it takes 2 laser guided shells to kill a tank. So that is potentially 18 armored vehicles. If you get your lasers, or if you sort all your lasers out, that you can annihilate with this thing. And bringing out the Brutus for 150, well, actually you should up armor it for 160 points. Just getting 2 of these out and sniping targets is the absolute way to go. So if you don't do that already, definitely do it. The AMRAAM is the best. There's no air defense in the Russian deck. The AMRAAM is the best anti-helicopter missile. It works fantastically well, and it tracks them well, and it hits them hard. So if you're struggling to kill Russian helicopters, it's because you're not using an AMRAAM equipped vehicle. The Airborne has it, making it the best option in my eyes. It's very good. 140 points is a very cheap price tag, if I'm honest. It's very fast, it's very mobile, it's a very, very good, capable unit. The Avenger is also something that's fantastic. Stingers have, I think their accuracy just feels like it's improved or whatever, but yeah, this is a great vehicle. Again, dirt cheap. You can fit it into you can fit 3 of these into the back of a Chinook, by the way. So if you do drop it off on the enemy's back line, you can cause some absolute havoc. You can also, by the way, put a slam ram into the enemy's back line using a Chinook. If its Chinook's load capacity is 12,500 weight, and so this will take all of the slots up, but it's just great. I mean, in all honesty, you may as well, instead of Chinooking these things, just drive it all the way around, because it is nice and quick. So yeah, there you go. Don't use the single stinger pod. Nobody does. It's a bit crazy. And in all honesty, if you're not going to stick it in a plane, then you don't need the parachute option. So having that smoke is a really nice feature. You can they still free of their weight does not go up, despite the armor obviously going up, being heavy. So you still fit 3 of these in a Chinook with 500 supply remaining. Nice. America wins this one by a landslide. Helicopters then. Right, so is it time for Revenge of the Sith, Revenge of the Russian Ka-52s? Yeah, I think so. I love the Ka-52 for many reasons. It is a pure, beefy attack helicopter, and even if you just use it in this configuration, it is going to do a lot of damage. What does America have in response, however? Okay, we're going to look at the Apache, and we're going to see how it fares on paper, looking like this. Now, of course, you got to remember that these missiles aren't as good as the S-13s. A better comparison is probably these S-8 rockets, which are more powerful than the Hydras, but these are more accurate, which is obviously very important to note. If you want to go for this game, numbers is better, then 76 Hydras does go a long, long way. Of course, you can get this too. So, what are my thoughts on the helicopter comparison? Now, the Apache is considerably cheaper. 35 points does go a long way. The Ka-52, however, is considerably better, and its weapon selection, even with the gun pods, is just fantastic. But for the same price, for the exact same price, you get more ECM, more armor, ever so slightly. It's not that important anymore with the slam ram being a thing. Guns or 76, yeah, so less weaponry for the if we're keeping the price to the constant here. But this is not what I'm interested in. These Hydras are not what I'm interested in at all. What I'm actually interested in is this. For still 160 points, which is insanely cheap. Bear in mind that again, for the same price, you just get guns. You get 4 Hellfires, which are incredible, and you still get some Hydra guided rockets. You can, of course, even upgrade it for just a small fee to get way more rockets, but of course they're no longer guided. I would take the Apache into battle any day over this. Yeah, it's just a nonsensical thing where even though these are fantastic in their own right, when you look at these, when you look at what the same amount of money can buy you, I take the Apache any day. That is incredibly cheap. And Russia's meant to be going down the line of the cheap units en masse, but America definitely has that feature here. When we look at the Guardian as well, for example, you know that their Hellfires are fire and forget as well, so they have a nice bit of range on them. 100 meters more, but yeah, it's still very relevant. And top attack damage and their fire and forget, they are phenomenal. Obviously, you can also max them out to have 25% ECM, just like the KA-52. Now, if we were to try and max this out to be amazing, again, this is of course more expensive, but I'd take this into battle any day, just because being able to spit out these Hellfires is a huge bonus, especially when there's a huge abundance of Russian spam. Now, we do have to factor in the fact that Russian air defense is stronger overall, but the Slam Ram has pretty much leveled the playing field, so it's no longer as effective to have these Russian helicopters. In the early stages, when Slam Rams couldn't shoot helis, the KA-52 was absolutely the king of the air. But nowadays, I'm absolutely leaning much closer to the Apaches on this one, just because of not only their price point, but also just their superior firepower. We do, of course, have the Mi-28 for Russia, and the Lemur missiles are incredibly good. Apart from their damage has been reduced. They used to have more penetration. Sorry, the damage is the same, but they used to have more penetration, and they used to kill a lot more effectively. Now, you've got to remember as well that this missile is slower than the Hellfire, which is actually something that you do notice on the battlefield. It's quite a considerable speed. It's about a quarter slower than the Hellfire. And that means that it's going to take a lot longer to track to its target, gives the enemy a lot more time to react and to smoke off, etc., and protect themselves. Obviously, you only get 4 of these for, again, when you look at the price difference, so you get 4 of these, 4 of these. This is double the price. It's, sorry, okay, let me do this. It is 1.5 times the price. Bear in mind, you also get these. Of the Apache, and you only get 4 shots. Now, terminal guidance is kind of important, but the problem is that if it loses tracking on the vehicle, it will target infantry instead. And 20 damage to infantry really isn't that much, to be honest, because infantry squads, you know, that's 4 men is 20 HP. And let's be honest, this isn't going to one-shot a 4-man squad, so it does make it loses its magic. Now, if you have 2 of these helicopters coming up and spamming those shots out, it's a bit more effective because you need to just go in, smash and dash. But again, with Slam Rams being able to one-shot these as well rather comfortably, it no longer has its charm. So the Apaches are still king of the battlefield. The Americans are still winning this quite comfortably. When it comes to these attack helicopters, they're kind of in a league of their own because they're nowhere near as effective as the KA-52 or the Mi-28, but they still pack a fairly reasonable punch, and they can transport infantry as well, which is quite an interesting feature they have. You can make this thing dual use, Igla and anti-tank, but why would you want to? And you can even improve its protection system. But again, when you look at this, when you compare it to the Apache, I'm taking the Apache every day of the week. These Iglas, they're just not that effective. There's only 4 of them, and the attackers, they take too long to fire. when we talk about the Mi-24, if you just want to spam them out en masse with these rockets, 140 points, again, for that price, you'd rather an Apache any day of the week. It's much superior in every shape, way, and form. Exact same armor. Yeah, okay, you can take 8 people on board, but who cares? Optics, much better. ECM, better. And firepower, insanely good. So it does seem a bit pointless. Now, of course, the cannon is good, but when do you get to use it before getting shot down, fighting against open targets? Yeah. Kiowas. Again, a bit of a unique unit, but let's have a look. 115 to have it as a dedicated anti-helicopter helicopter. Kind of expensive for what it is, but you get, it's very slow as well, but you do get some stingers, and obviously if you spam these out, you'll do alright. A really nice cheap way to use them is this, just as an extended laser finder, because obviously infantry can lace for 2 kilometers, vehicles for 3. So you do get that extra range here. It makes sense. Okay, transport helicopters then. Well, you've got 3 options as Russia. The mighty, humongous, chungus Mi-26, basically the same size fuselage as an A320 or Boeing 787. No, 737. What am I talking about here? Mi-28, Mi-8, and the other Mi-8. For America, you got the Chinook and the Black Hawk. It's not even close. Again, I don't really know why I'm wasting time talking about this. It's really cool that this has weapons on board. I do really like that aspect. I do really enjoy having the dirt cheap Cocons on it. Cocon, I don't know. But it's a little bit expensive for what it is. It feels quite sluggish and slow, even though the speed on paper is 260. This one is definitely a lot slower, even if you do try and max out the pylons. The Mi-26, huge thing you never take because it's extremely expensive. That's how much a Paradrop plane costs, and it's going to get shot down because it's got no ECM or anything no stealth, no anything like that to distract enemy missiles. So this will get shot down. The Chinook, however, does have some ECM. It's a lot quicker, very good speed, and it can fit in quite a nice amount of cargo. So I do really like it. This, by the way, if you're going for a speedier version, is not as quick and cannot take as much cargo. Dropping vehicles off in the back line with the Chinook is a really fun option. Putting miniguns on it is also really good because they do a fair amount of damage. I wouldn't go for these guns, I'd go for the miniguns. And the Black Hawk is the Black Hawk. You know what it is. You've all seen Black Hawk Down if you're watching this channel. And it's just a very good, quick transport for when you're short on supply or when you need troops on the flank. It works very, very well. So without a shadow of doubt, America wins this one as well. This is potentially where things might get ever so slightly interesting. Let's talk about the transports first. America gets the Herc. Herc is beautiful. Good bit of kit. No complaints there. It's nice and cheap, but no ECM, making it a little bit pointless. The Glowmaster, however, is phenomenal. It is quick. These are the same speed, by the way. Okay, this does have an advantage in the fact that it's got guns on the back, but no, that doesn't matter. In terms of the carrying capacity, the Glowmaster, not that it really matters, by the way, but the Glowmaster takes way more tonnage. It has ECM, but less people, interestingly, which I didn't really think would be the case, considering I guess it's actually a lot longer. This is a much longer frame. Okay, yeah, the C-17 is definitely the champion here just because of that ECM. It really does save its skin and make you get paras in the air, so dropping your paras a lot quicker. Quite a viable solution. So yeah, transports, America wins this, but that's not the most important thing right here. Let's compare the nukes. Let's compare the big boy bombers. Right, you've got 2 schools of thought. These are basically copies of each other. Whoever copied each other first, I don't know. I think Russia copied America. You can see the design is almost identical. What you've got is a cruise missile nuke, which has the advantage of being able to fire and RTB and getting that refund. So you're not going to be shot down unless you play very badly with the Tu-160. However, obviously it's a cruise missile and it can be intercepted, and America does have very good missile. It's got very good shore ride overall, so the chances of it being intercepted are reasonably high. The chances of this being intercepted are low. This can be shot down. Bear in mind that obviously this is a dumb bomb, so if you deploy this, it will get shot down. It's whether you drop this before getting shot down. That is the question. So definitely get shot down. Almost definitely won't get shot down. Might get intercepted, won't get intercepted. That is the trade-off you got to look here. Both have afterburners, by the way, and this is actually quicker. But again, it doesn't matter because this isn't going into the enemy's line of fire. So the nuke is obviously but one option. We've got cruise missiles as well. Now, with the cruise missiles, again, for just 200 points more, you get double the cruise missile capacity. And these cruise missiles are better. And being able to spam them out is a huge advantage. They're faster, they do more damage, higher blast radius. They're better in every way, shape, and form. So paying that extra 200 points for this is absolutely worth it. When we talk about just doing dumb bombs, which is not something you really use these guys for, yeah, there's not really too much purpose for using these because, yeah, they are laser guided, but this can't laser, so you're gonna have to have pre-lasered targets if you want to use these bombs. Kind of crazy. If you want to just, you know, afterburners dumb bomb, then yeah, that works too, but this becomes more expensive, even though, again, less bombs. But they do more damage, and they are very effective, so yeah. These, however, is actually something that's worth considering, because these are humongous 9,000 kilo bombs, 9-ton bombs. You get 2 of them, and essentially it does work like a mini nuke. It is going to be a one-way trip, no doubt about that, but you get 2 targets. And the blast radius is huge on them. Let's double check what this is. So 350 meters down. On these 2,000 pounders, it's 150 meters. The penetration is insane. You can easily kill tanks with these within radius, but obviously 24 2,000 pounders goes quite a long way as well. So very similar, and they have their, you know, advantages and disadvantages for both. If you're going to go for line bombing, then yeah, we're not going to go down this route at all. Cool, so the big heavy bombers are the same. The Transports America wins. A unique unit that no other country in the world has, the A-10, obviously a great bit of engineering. It is phenomenal just for its gun alone. A little bit expensive though, is 90 points on the PTE, and I think 140 is a little bit expensive. 90 was the perfect sweet point for it. Mavericks are, of course, great. They work really efficiently. Their terminal guidance, they can switch targets if you smoke out, and even though the higher elo you get, the better at micro you are, etc., being able to make sure all of your units dodge the missiles is quite a hard thing. So maybe some of them are out of smoke, or maybe you just aren't quick enough to make sure all of them smoke out. And either way, even if, you know, obviously if you kill one tank, you've broken even, but even if you don't manage to kill anything, say, making sure that they all, like 6 vehicles waste of smoke is going to be nice. Bear in mind, IFVs only have 1 smoke, and chances are that it might already be used. So yeah, you're going to clap it. And these do one shot extremely well. It is a fantastic missile. 5% ECM isn't a lot. You can upgrade it, but it becomes just way too expensive for that. So yeah. Oh, sorry. Great unit. Let's talk about some of the fighters only. The last thing we'll talk about is fighter bombers, and again, the A-10 is in a league of its own. The fighters that you get, essentially the Su-35 is the best configuration. Now let's talk about what the best setup of the Su-35 is. It is 4 and 4 of these. These missiles are really good. They work really well. Let's pin that up. For the Americans, now you don't have any 9-kilometer missiles, which is a bit of a drawback, to be fair. So yeah, there we go. Here's the direct comparison. You both get 8 missiles, but of course you get 2 better ones. AMRAAMs do track well. R-77s track well as well. The R-37s are really good too. This should win every time, but because there's not that much difference between the two, there is a bit of RNG in who actually wins and how well you micro. Because if you twist and turn and micro your plane, it does actually help it dodge missiles, believe it or not. And you can do a lot of work by doing a lot of hard turns when the missiles are coming towards you. So anyway, there is a bit of RNG as well, and essentially I prefer the Su-35, but for the price there's really not too much distinction between them. When you take into account 80 points difference, which is a huge margin, then yeah, they become very similar. When you put this, the direct comparison, I don't understand why this Russian one is more expensive. I really don't. It's got less fuel, speed's the same, ECM's the same. I have no idea. Can anybody tell me? Is this a bit unfair? This missile is marginally, arguably better, just because it has one more damage, but in reality, 2 missiles will take a plane down, so it doesn't matter if it's 17, 18, or 19. You still need 2 missiles. Or 11, for that matter. It just doesn't matter. So, yeah, very interesting here. Not really sure. Not really sure. Okay, so ultimately, though, the 9K missiles do win it. So when it's just pure fighters, yeah, the Russians have this one in the bag. When we compare it to this bad boy, and it is a naughty little bad boy, you don't really want it as a fighter because you get less long-range missiles, and it's more expensive. I don't see the point in having the Su-57 as a fighter, so it's going to be considered as a fighter bomber. It's the same story for the MiG-35. You can make it a fighter, but there's honestly very little point in doing so. Yeah, I'll take this all day, any day. Again, having that fuel as well, it just means that you can loiter for so much longer, and it's a lot more of an instructive option. Okay, so America does not win the fighter, the Su-35 does. But now we talk about fighter bombers, and this is where things get a bit messy, because the Sex Eagle, as you know, is probably the hardest. It can be used as an absolute spam ram. If you didn't know, you can have... Hold on. I'm pretty sure you can have more. There we go. Yeah, 16 AMRAMs on this thing. That is mental, isn't it? And they're going to... Hold on. Hold the phone. 20 AMRAMs on this thing. Jesus Christ. That is just... Look at that thing. That is absolutely mental. I like these ones that cling on to sort of the butt cheeks of the spam ram. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. This is lethal. I have seen these, or 2 of these, destroy an entire Russian opener. Now, they did need some cannon fodder in front of them, sure, but the rate at which they spit out the missiles is just in absolute insanity. Crazy. Yeah, okay. It's kind of cheap as well. Anyway, fighter bombers. Right, okay, so we've got this. The best setup that you can use for it is 5 of these, bit of harm, and a nice cheap configuration of 4 AMRAMs here. 550 points, you're going to do a lot of damage. You can also use it as a cruise missile with a seed, meaning that your cruise missiles will get through. Where's the option up here? Yeah, nice. That works too. Yeah, really good options. You honestly have a great selection of weaponry that you can use. I do think the bombs are better, just because 5 2,000 pounders can really do a lot of damage and take a lot of stuff out, again, especially if you do have a lot of lasers set up. So, very good unit. Let's talk about this, the Strike Eagle. It is kind of not my favorite at all. I don't really... I do see the purpose of it, but it's a little bit expensive for just clusters. You can try and make it a little bit cheaper, 365, there you go. But that's a lot. You need to have a really big Russian convoy to make this super effective. And if you mix the loadout to make it... You can't have any less clusters, by the way, because they just won't do enough damage. If you do mix the loadout to have HE, it makes it a little bit pointless, because what is that HE going to achieve that the clusters aren't? And you basically have to have a really perfect line of infantry and vehicles, so it does become expensive for that. So that's why you just run it in the fully cluster configuration. Yeah, and it makes it slightly cheaper. Definitely don't run it like this. Whatever you do, the clusters aren't enough and the HE isn't enough, so it becomes super pointless. Just have it like this. Cool. This works in very specific situations where you see a perfect convoy lined up of Russian armor, this works great. And you can scream it in with afterburners, low altitude, get quite a lot of kills. But that's very, very situational. Let's look at the Russian fighter bombers. You've got this, which is actually used mainly as a seed. So people, I mean, the Americans do have a seed equivalent. It's this. You can just set it up as a seed plane. There you go. But yeah, that's quite a lethal combination as well. 4 seed, Christ. Scream that in, you're going to be fragging for days. Yeah, anyway, back to where I was. This is mainly used as seed. So there we go. You can put the rockets on it as well, just to shoot down the occasional drone that might pop your way. Very, very expensive seed unit. This can also be used for seed. Again, a very, very expensive seed unit, but these are good seed missiles. So there's your trade-off. Yeah, I like the SU-57 because the 1.25 stealth seemingly helps, but otherwise the MiG-35 does the job very, very well as well. What I actually really like is to use these missiles. Now, I know they're not actually that good, and actually these smart bombs are very respectable. You do get, if you hold fire, go low altitude, pop up to drop the bombs, release fire so that the seed fires at very close range, you stand a good chance of killing stuff. Obviously not things like the Striker SHORAD or anything with a gun on it, but you stand a very good chance to kill stuff nonetheless. These bombs are very good, and you can self-laser, so they become very effective. With the Su-34, it's the same story, where you can take seed on board, and where are those bombs that I really like? Okay, well, there's a lot of really good combinations, obviously. These big boy bombs, and 6 incendiary is crazy. The smart bomb's good. This dumb bomb is very good as well. There's really fantastic options. I wouldn't go for the cruise missiles. You can't even go for the air-to-ground. They're nowhere near as good as Mavericks just because their penetration isn't as high and they don't do top attack damage. But still very decent, very respectable missiles. Here's the anti-radiation. What you can do is have these smart bombs as well. And it's a wide selection of weapons, probably too many, but you know, it's still a very, very capable loadout. With the 57, we've established you can do the same thing. With the Su-30, these used to be cruise missiles, now they're air-to-ground missiles, and they're very powerful, but they have very low penetration, so they really do struggle to kill vehicles because they don't even do top armor attack. How depressing. Yeah, I really like them in their cruise missile configuration. They were great. Now they're just a bit pointless. So you can use this as a fighter, by the way. It makes for a very decent, respectable fighter on a budget. 2 and 2, 245 points, but it's obviously nowhere near as good as the Su-35. But yeah, still an option. Definitely don't bring it like this. Okay, so when we're talking about the Russian air then overall, so the strike fighters or the fighter bombers is undoubtedly much better for the Russians here. I don't think anybody can argue that. There's really, really good options, a really nice variety of weapons, and this fighter is superior to the American one overall. It is more expensive though, and you do run a risk of losing these quite a lot again. A lot of them can do low altitude drops, which is really nice, especially the Su-34 with its 6 big boy clusters. I think I prefer the Russians for this overall. I do prefer the cruise nuke, and I do prefer the just variety of weapons. There's nothing that can beat 24 cruise missile spam. And whilst the transports are better and you get the advantage of the A-10, the Russians finally have a win in this category. So the VDV is finally something that's worth writing home about when it comes to the air tab. But it's very close because there's things like the Sex Eagle, which again is phenomenal. This, very good value for money, even if you run it as a dirt cheap fighter like this. Very good bang for your buck. It's just a very good loadout. So, Recon, Infantry, Vehicle Support, and Helicopters, they are absolutely unanimously won by America. America is superior here for the Airborne Paratrooper categories. In the air tab, Russia just clinches it. So, when we're comparing what is better, and of course you do have to look at the points distribution that you get. Here's the Russian one, and here's the American one. yeah, I'd take America all day, any day, and it pairs up. I find the Airborne with all the other specs pairs up really, really nicely. The Russian Airborne spec pairs up nicely with you know, the guards and the mechanized, but seldom much else. So yeah, there's the drawbacks. Overall, I think America wins this one all day long. So yeah, again, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers for watching. Bye-bye.